Hello and welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. If you spent any time hanging out around here, you will know that while the sparkle of shiny new board games will frequently draw my gaze, my heart never strays far from the comfortable little nook in my soul where I gather old treasures from a lost time. So today we are going to review an older game, a game I have mentioned numerous times on the channel and have been meaning to review for years. A game with a big brand and a bigger name attached to it, that really did try to stand out in a crowded market, but which only enjoyed a brief European release and really suffered from being a day late and a dollar short. If you've seen the title of the video, you know I am talking about Legend of Zagor by fighting fantasy author Ian Livingstone. It's a game set in Amaryllia, but that fabled realm lies at the end of a long and winding road which loops as a glittering ribbon of light into the mists of my childhood. Our adventure starts there. Well, technically, this story starts in 1982 when I was only 3, but I'm not going to let that get in the way of a good yarn. In that year, Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone published a game book called The Warlock of Firetop Mountain. It was the very first in the fighting fantasy series, which I would discover at the close of the 80s and fall into. Firetop Mountain puts you in the role of a brave adventurer seeking wealth beyond measure. Unfortunately, that wealth is in the possession of the titular warlock Zagor, who isn't best pleased about the whole situation. Ultimately, you will face and destroy Zagor so you can steal his money because, I guess, you were the bad guy? The book was not only the foundation for a new series of gamebook classics, it was also the beginning of a trilogy in which Zagor would return time and again, and it was even adapted into a board game in 1986, which I guess I will need to talk about one day. Zagor's second appearance was in Return to Firetop Mountain, published in 1992. This triumphant return of an old villain marked a milestone in the fighting fantasy series, as this was the 50th title. Turns out the sneaky old warlock had managed to protect himself with a resurrection spell, and now he's back seeking revenge on anyone and everything for the whole killing him and stealing his money business. But if you successfully play through Return to Firetop Mountain, you will face and defeat Zagor again. Alas, in the style of any good Saturday morning cartoon villain, even that doesn't put an end to the warlock. He is banished to the realm of Amaryllia, where he takes up residence in Castle Argent. That's the setting for the concluding book in the Zagor gamebook trilogy, the 54th book in the fighting fantasy series, Legend of Zagor, published in 1993. And this is where one of 4 brave heroes finally gives old Zagor the send-off he deserves. But the most relevant thing about Legend of Zagor for our purposes here today is that the book was adapted into a board game for 1 to 4 players, also published in 1993 by Parker, a division of Hasbro. And this isn't just any board game. It's a board game with a gimmick. Several gimmicks. Not least dramatic voices delivered thanks to the mind-melting, cutting-edge power of the 40K computer chip housed inside the 3D board. Oh my goodness, there is nothing about this game that isn't exciting. Okay, maybe the gameplay, but you can't have everything. We'll get to that anyway. I bought my copy of Legend of Zagor on eBay many years ago, and it was all unpunched with the miniatures attached to the frames. It almost pained me to prep the game, but games are for playing, and so I cut and filed and punched and tore up a little piece of history that I could have preserved. Totally worth it though. Legend of Zagor is one of the, to be fair many, jewels in my collection. It has been the centerpiece of some fantastic gaming evenings over the years. And it truly is a centerpiece for your table, an eye-catching, sprawling, multi-tiered dungeon with the kind of toy factor that's going to awaken the child in any adult who sits down to play. To begin, you must first build the board. The grey zone, called the Chambers of Death, is first. This is where the heroes will find a friendly shopkeeper who clearly understands that the location is all important in running a successful enterprise. A steady flow of heroes keep his coffers full, but repeat business is somewhat lacking. Here in the chambers you will also find the flame pit and the well room, terrifying locations that don't actually do anything. The rooms are marked with special symbols solely because at some point in the game a hero may be sent there by Zagor. Next, place the little grey card tiles, 1 per corridor space. This bit always upsets me because it obscures all the nice moulded detail on the spaces. These tiles represent the nice things you will find on your journey, like weapons and armour discarded by fallen heroes, and some good old-fashioned pit traps and deadly encounters. You will also find a host of evil denizens to battle, who are all obviously very territorial as they each live in their own little room and they never ever leave. Goblins, orcs, skeletons, and zombies. No idea who designed these miniatures, but they're pretty cool. Some of the different enemy types even have variant sculpts, like the zombies that are either swinging a bone or a hatchet, and they wouldn't look too out of place roaming around a Hero Quest dungeon. Battle through the Chambers of Death, and there are stone stairs leading up to the Hall of Fear, which scored 3 stars on TripAdvisor. Visitors said it was more exciting than the Chamber of Mild Unease, but less homely. We have another 2 named locations here, the Forge and the Great Hall, which seems like something of an exaggeration as it's the same size as every other room. Again, there is nothing actually special about these special locations. Do note though, while the board is plastic, all of the rooms have beautifully illustrated card inserts with really evocative artwork. They do an amazing job of bringing this dungeon to life. Here we position a brown tile on each corridor space. There is a lot more bad stuff here, so exploring comes with an increased chance of being exploded to death. And of course, no Hall of Fear is complete without some more monsters. We have a troll, a hellhorn, 2 ogres, and 2 chaos champions? Can I say that? Do I need to check with my lawyers? Dread champions? No? Champions of low moral fibre? Regardless of what you call them, all the monsters in the Hall of Fear are stronger than those you met in the Chamber of Death, meaning it will be a great challenge to make it through the hall to the rope ladder that leads to the terrifying crypt of Zagor. Here you place the remaining green tiles on the spaces, place the dragon, and finally position Zagor, lord and master of all he surveys. The crypt also houses the computer chip that will randomise events in the game, control monsters, and give you a hard time. We will get to that soon enough. First, we need to create our characters. There are 4 characters to choose from, all taken from the Zagor Chronicles novels, which were a spin-off from the gamebook series. The heroes are Anvar the Barbarian, who is absolutely just slain from the 2000 AD comics. How the heck did they get away with that? Then there is Stubble the Dwarf, Braxus the Warrior, and Salazar the Wizard. For each hero there is a character sheet. At first glance they look the same, but they aren't. This is the science part. All the heroes will start with a strength of 1 and 6 stamina points. They will then get 20 gold coins to spend on equipment, and while every hero is capable of using any item, they won't all pay the same to equip them. Want your wizard to have a sword? He can, but it's going to cost him a whopping 6 gold, while the warrior can get the sword for just 2 gold. Conversely, the wizard can pick up a nifty magic ring for just 2 gold, while everyone else is paying 5. As a result, in order to make the most efficient use of your money, heroes will in the first instance gravitate towards the most cost-effective options, which will generally align with the characteristics you would expect them to have. Your barbarian is going to end up with an axe, your dwarf is going to end up with some armour, and so on. Not that it actually matters all that much. A lot of the equipment does the same thing. Swords, chainmail, helmets, shields, and axes all just buff your strength value. Only the torches, the magic items, the hirelings, and the mules give you anything in the way of new skills. Finally, each hero is dealt 1 random spell, or 2 if they have a magic ring. There is a huge wedge of spells, almost all different, really varied, all beautifully illustrated in full colour. He looks familiar. And this is one of the best things in the game because you are going to use spells a lot. On each turn, a hero is allowed to cast 1 spell. If they do, the spell is discarded and immediately replaced with a new one. If they don't cast a spell on their turn, they can freely discard any spell they don't want to draw a replacement. This means almost every turn your hero is going to have something special they can do, and you are getting a constant stream of new abilities. It's a great system that helps to stop a very basic game from becoming too stale. At this point, you are almost ready to begin. You just need to wake Zagor. You press the power button on the crypt, and Zagor will say,
"Who dares challenge me?"
You then press the button for each hero taking part, and yes, you can select just 1 hero and play solo if you like.
Dwarf, wizard, warrior, barbarian.
Once you have made your selections, Zagor will get things rolling by selecting a hero to go first.
Wizard, begin.
And you're away. The aim is, of course, to give Zagor a kick in the keister, but he's no slouch in a fight, so first you will need to find treasure chests containing talismans and silver daggers that he has absent-mindedly left lying about the place. On your turn, you can move up to 2 spaces, or 3 if you have elven boots. Tiles you pass over are ignored, but if you land on a space with a tile, you must reveal it and then follow the instructions. If it's equipment, you can keep it if you have space on your character sheet for it, or else you have to return it to the board face down. If it's a trap, congratulations, you're going to have a bad time. You lose stamina as indicated by the tile and then leave it face down. If it's an encounter tile, you follow the instructions as described and then leave the tile face down. If it's a random event tile, you press the random button on the crypt and Zagor will randomly select a hero to mess with in some way.
Stop, warrior! A trap. Lose 1 stamina. Stop!
And then the tile goes face down back on the board. Finally, if you find a secret passage, you leave the tile face up on the board and may use the passage immediately to move to any other face up secret passage. As you can see, exploration is mandatory and it's going to happen most turns. If you land on a tile, you have to interact with it. Furthermore, as you explore, many of the things you find will remain on the board but concealed, so there is a strong memory element at play. Fortunately, there's no roll to move, and it's very rare you would be forced into a position where you have to knowingly step on something bad. In this game, it's not the dice that hate me, it's my own short-term memory. Even then, I am not completely at the mercy of my old age, as you sometimes get torches which you can discard to peek at an adjacent tile. If you don't end your move in a corridor, you're, by process of elimination, ending your move in a room. Depending on the room, one of 2 things is going to happen. If you went to the shop,
Suddenly, as if by magic, the shopkeeper appeared.
you can buy anything you like at the cost listed on your character sheet. If you have wandered into any other room and there is no active monster, you can take a little breath and that's that. If there is an active monster, it's going to kick off. Unfortunately, for all the game's best efforts to make fighting a thrilling endeavour, it kind of isn't. To get the party started, you press either the level 1 or level 2 button on the crypt, depending on which part of the dungeon you are in. Then this happens.
Who dares challenge me? Barbarian, prepare to die. You are not alone. You hear a sound behind you. Strength 4, stamina 2.
And it doesn't matter in the slightest what kind of monster you are fighting. Despite what the miniatures may suggest, they all act the same. All that matters is where in the dungeon you have encountered them. Combat proceeds in rounds because, otherwise it would be chaos. Zagor always goes first and he will shout out an attack value.
2.
If it matches or exceeds your strength, you lose 1 stamina point. Then you roll a d10 while the crypt makes suitably fighty noises for you. If your roll matches the monster's strength, they will lose a stamina point. And then you just keep going. Okay, not quite. There are a few, very few decision points along the way. First, you may have a spell to use. Maybe you can charm the monster before your fight begins to make it work for you, or maybe you can just hit it in the mush with a fireball. Second, if you have a hireling or a previously charmed monster, you can send that to fight for you. Hirelings have a strength of 5 and 3 stamina, so in the early stages of the game, they may be tougher than you are. Hopefully they will kill the monster, but at worst they will probably soften it up for you so that when the hireling dies, you can step up and finish the job. Third, you may have some beneficial magic items. You can use 1 magic arrow during the fight to automatically reduce the monster's stamina by 1, or you can drink healing potions at any time to restore your own stamina. Finally, if things are really going badly, you can run away. When you do this, you must discard 1 treasure chest, or a piece of equipment if you don't have any chests, and then you leave the room with your tail tucked between your legs but your head still attached to your neck. Whether you win or lose, at the end of the fight you press the same button on the crypt that you used to start the fight, and this will happen. If you won, you will get a number of treasure chests equal to the level of the room, and you can knock the monster over to indicate that room has been raided and nobody else can benefit from going there. If you lost, death is not the end. You simply lose any chests you were carrying, miss a turn, and then restart the dungeon. And that's pretty much all there is to the game. It's not so much an adventure as it is a race, and certainly there is no cooperation here. The heroes may have the same goal, but there can be only one winner. It's even possible for a hero that lands adjacent to a rival hero to engage in combat. This works exactly like regular combat, except Zagor keeps his nose out of it and the players roll against each other. If at any point one player dies or surrenders, the winner gets to take a chest, an item, or all of the gold from the loser. Additionally, many of the spells in the game allow you to mess with the other players. As I mentioned before, the ultimate goal is to face and defeat Zagor, but that's not going to be easy. For a start, he's defended by a dragon that you will need to slay. The dragon is a level 2 monster but gets an additional 2 strength and 2 stamina. That may not sound too bad, but to make things worse, inside the crypt magic is useless. Your spells will no longer work and you can't use magic arrows or elven boots. And if you do get past the dragon, you go toe to toe with Zagor himself, who has 12 strength and 12 stamina and will occasionally blast you with spells rather than attacking in the normal fashion. As always, these battles are handled by the crypt, and while it's all supposed to be randomised, you will absolutely feel like the game is rigged against you as Zagor pummels you into a fine paste. The only shining light in this crypt of perpetual darkness is that Zagor is weak to the treasures you find in the chests scattered around his dungeon. While these do not benefit you in the fight with the dragon, they provide a cumulative debuff against Zagor, where each chest in your possession reduces both his strength and stamina by 1 point. Sadly, no hero can carry more than 6 chests, although it is possible to acquire a mule that will let you carry 2 more. With most of your power stripped away and a hard limit on how many debuffs you can apply to Zagor, the final battle is somewhat anticlimactic. There is no longer any clever use of magic arrows and spells. The final showdown devolves into a simple dice-off, where you have to hope you roll high enough and often enough before Zagor decimates you with the spells you have no defense against. And that is a shame, because it does mean the final battle lacks some punch. It can be a bit of a chore rather than a triumph, and it isn't the fitting finale a good dungeon crawl deserves. It also means, and this is the biggest issue, basic equipment is more powerful in the final battle than magical equipment, so heroes who can buy basic equipment for the lowest price have a distinct head start in the race. For example, for the wizard to max out his strength at 8, which requires 1 sword, 1 chainmail, 1 helmet, 1 shield and 1 axe, it would cost him 23 gold. For the dwarf, the loadout would cost just 15 gold. Access to more spells does seem to help in this regard, but it still feels like the wizard is at a disadvantage. That's just nitpicking though, and Legend of Zagor wasn't built to be nitpicked. It was built to instill players with a sense of giddy wonder as a board game shouted at them. Because that is the real joy of this game, the now rather quaint but then rather awesome 40k computer chip. It's the same sort of tech that appeared in MB's Omega virus the previous year, and it's the beating heart of the experience. Yes, it's a gimmick, and yes, it isn't enough to support a rather humdrum game system across regular gaming sessions, but if you only roll this game out on rare occasions, it helps to ensure that each of those occasions is memorable. Not only does the crypt handle all of the combat with monsters, it will determine the first player in the game, randomise events when players find event tiles, and sometimes for no good reason, Zagor will suddenly pipe up and do something horrible to a hero without any provocation. He just gets a bit bored and does something to spice up the game. And that's pretty darn clever in itself, because it does mean that if there isn't enough going on, the game does something about it. At times, it feels a bit like playing Atmosphere. Also, very importantly, the crypt means Legend of Zagor offers a true solo experience. You don't need another player to control the dungeon, you don't need decks of cards to create random encounters, you don't even have to roll the dice for the monsters you meet along the way. It's all handled by that little black box. The only rule change for a solo outing is that if you die, it's game over, time to reset the board and try again. And that is neat, but it's not the only neat thing about the game. the game does at least attempt to elevate itself above the gimmick. It has beautiful presentation, a fun 3D board, attractive if functionally unnecessary miniatures, and fantastic illustrations across the cards, tokens and character sheets. It's fast paced and even includes 2 extra scenarios intended for quicker games, and it forces things to happen. Early in the game, most every turn will involve exploration of a tunnel space or combat in a room, and there is always something new happening, either through the tiles as they are revealed or Zagor acting like an absolute asshat. Even the way spells are constantly replenished ensures players are consistently presented with new opportunities. And you don't even have to roll to move. It also has an internal doom clock, its own little built-in kill switch if you like. Treasure chests are acquired by defeating the monsters in rooms, but monsters never respawn. At a certain point, there will be no more monsters and no way to find more chests. Eventually, someone will have to face Zagor, whether they want to or not. But unfortunately, the game is underpinned by huge amounts of randomness and that lackluster combat system derived directly from the game books, with monsters that are functionally identical, equipment that doesn't do anything beyond a simple stat buff, and a final battle that is more frustrating than fantastical. Despite all the exploration and fighting, something of the magic of a dungeon crawl is absent. Your heroes are generic, they only have 2 stats, they don't have any real way to level up, and you don't get the kind of excitement you might expect from kicking down doors, killing monsters, and taking their stuff. An effort was made, but beneath all the chrome and gimmicks there isn't much of an experience to be had, because the chrome and the gimmicks are the experience. This is a big old toy, an action figure playset. That's what you're going to remember. Not who won, not who killed the most monsters or found that awesome magical item. You're going to remember the plastic. And Zagor's voice, of course.
Who dares challenge me?
But that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.